Senator Seselja.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President, and I'm happy to speak against this motion. And as I was listening to Senator Milne, I was reminded of some of the talk about ferals in the Senate that we've heard in recent times, because this is a motion that in fact would seek to make ferals of us all. It's the sort of motion in shutting down the coal industry that is part of the Greens' overall agenda to send us all back to the caves, Mr Acting Deputy President. The ferals would well and truly be in charge if we were to support a motion like this, and if any sensible political party were to take the advice of the Greens on this issue. Because let's be clear, Acting Deputy President, the Greens are anti-coal, they're anti-gas, they're anti-mining of any sort, they're anti-roads, as we heard today, they're anti-new houses, they're anti-development, they are anti-jobs. We all know it to be true. Warren Mundine, I think it was recently, when he challenged the Greens to point to anywhere in the country where they might support a new mining project. Anywhere in the country where they would support a new mining project, and they wouldn't point to one. So they're happy to have the iPhones that come from mining, the cars that come from mining, all of the development that comes from mining, but they are anti it all, and they would see the jobs of tens of thousands of Australians thrown down the gurgler if we were to accept this motion. If we were to accept this motion, we would be condemning the state of New South Wales to a bleak economic future indeed. And I would, before I go into some of the economic impact that if such an approach that the Greens are calling for in this motion would have, I think it's just worth talking about. Senator Milne spoke a lot about political donations. There was no mention of Graham Wood, no mention of the $1.6 million donation, the largest in political history in Australia, to the Greens, which they were very grateful for. Bob Brown was very, very grateful.
Senator Milne, is there a point of order?
The point of order. Senator Seselja is misleading the Senate by not indicating that donation went through the Electoral Commission and was appropriately declared, not hidden like the ones to the Liberal Party.
There's no point of order, Senator Milne. Senator Seselja.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I can see the sensitivity. You mentioned Graham Wood. And the Greens are on their feet. The Greens are immediately on their feet. They don't want to talk about the $1.6 million donation, which Bob Brown said he was eternally grateful for. Eternally grateful for the $1.6 million donation. I think they're also eternally grateful for the donations they get from the CFMEU. They are eternally grateful, and they back it up. They get the donations from the CFMEU and they back it up by opposing efforts to stamp out corruption and lawlessness on building sites. That's what the Greens do in response. They get the donations from the CFMEU and they respond very strongly with their vote, because they don't support efforts to actually clean up our building sites, to get rid of corrupt behaviour on our building sites, to get rid of unlawful behaviour, thuggish behaviour, as we've been hearing about just in the last few days on our building sites around the country. Forgive me if I won't take advice from the Greens on some of these issues. But let's go to the economic impacts, because I'm going to deal with the coal seam gas issues, but this motion calls on the New South Wales parties in the New South Wales election in the state of New South Wales to ban coal mining and coal seam gas. So I'm going to deal with both. I'm going to deal with the impacts if that advice were to be followed before I go into some of the regulation of coal seam gas in the state of New South Wales. So let's have a look at the contribution around the country and then in New South Wales of coal mining, just coal mining. Let's take it out. Let's take one part of this motion, because the Greens want to shut this industry down. And I think people should know how many jobs are at stake. So there are, around the country, there are approximately 55,000 direct jobs for Australians in the coal industry. There are around 145,000 related jobs for Australians. That's $6 billion of wages paid to Australian workers through the coal industry. The Bureau of Resources and Energy Economics estimates coal is responsible for export earnings of $40 billion. It accounts for around 15% of Australia's total exports. So Senator Milne gets on her feet and says she wants to see $40 billion of export industry killed, $6 billion of wages, 145,000 jobs the Greens would seek to kill through a motion like this if their policy prescription was followed. It goes further. State Treasury papers record that the coal industry was responsible for royalty payments of $20.5 billion between 2006-7 and 2012-13. $20.5 billion. Deloitte Access Economics estimate the coal industry is responsible for $17.7 billion in company tax in that same period. So think of the impact if that amount of company tax wasn't paid, if that amount of royalties hadn't been paid to the states. Who would pay for the hospitals? Who would pay for the schools? Who would pay for the roads? I mean, it's an extraordinary argument that we're hearing. Professor Sinclair Davidson says coal's overall contribution to our economy can be estimated up to $60 billion. This is a massive industry for Australia. And to sort of say that we can just kill an industry, because the Greens don't like it, is absurd and should be rejected. Coal is responsible for 34% of Australia's primary energy and 75% of our grid electricity. In New South Wales, it accounts for 90% of grid electricity. Let's have a look at the New South Wales stats when it comes to coal mining. In 2012-13, $17.8 billion worth of coal mined in New South Wales. 85% of that was exported, worth $15.2 billion. More generally, in mining in New South Wales, there are 40,000 jobs and $1.3 billion in royalties a year. This is the size of this industry that the Greens are now arguing should be killed, should be shut down. No party deserves to be taken seriously when they come out with these kind of statements. This would be the world according to the Greens. An industry that employs 145,000 Australians, an industry which is one of our largest exports, would be shut down. Of course, those states, as I say, we wouldn't have the ability of those states to fund the essential services that they need if they were just going to throw out jobs in this way, if they were just going to shut down industries as the Greens would have them do. Now let's go to the issue around coal seam gas. And let's look, and I think the other point to make about this motion is it's also seeking to have the Senate dictate to the state of New South Wales what their policies should be. That is the other aspect of this that I object to. I actually do believe that the people of New South Wales should be able to decide how they use their resources, how they manage their economy, what kind of rules and regulations they put in place for environmental approvals and others. I think it's an important point to make. But let's have a look at given this motion does try and dictate terms to the New South Wales government, I think it's worth looking at some of what has actually been put in place by the New South Wales coalition government. There is no doubt that the New South Wales government wants to see, when it comes to coal seam gas, it wants to see things done sustainably and reasonably and using world's best practice standards. I think all Australians and all people in New South Wales would want to see not industries just completely banned. What they would want to see, though, is for us to be careful, for us to be cautious, for us to ensure that we have excellent environmental standards. So let's have a look. The former New South Wales Labor government gave out 39 petroleum exploration licences with no oversight and no regard for the environment, no regard for water or the impacts on our best agricultural land. There was no community consultation. Now, the Baird government has taken a different approach. It has a sensible plan to manage coal seam gas and clean up the former Labor government's mess. They are buying back the licences Labor issued without any consideration of the impacts on the community. 12 licences have been bought and cancelled. They have put a freeze on new licences for 12 months. So they're taking a very cautious and responsible approach to this issue. As a result of steps taken by the Baird government, New South Wales now has the toughest CSG regulations in the country. They've put in place a moratorium on CSG exploration in Sydney's drinking water catchment. They've implemented CSG exclusion zones within 2 kilometres of homes and critical industry. They have mapped more than 2 million hectares of prime agricultural land and protected it from CSG. And they've banned the use of BTEX chemicals and evaporation ponds. Importantly, New South Wales Coalition Government has appointed a Land and Water Commissioner to assist landowners and oversee CSG exploration. As usual, Labor caused the problem, and it's up to the Coalition to clean it up. And as usual, the Greens aren't interested in what's actually being done. They're simply interested in slogans and grandstanding. Unlike the Greens, the Baird government has actually done the hard work. They've examined the issue, discussed the issue, developed policy and dealt with the issue. The Greens would rather just make noise in the Senate, yell, shut down entire industries that employ hundreds of thousands of Australians, that are responsible for tens of billions of dollars of economic activity and exports. The Baird government has been far more sensible than that, because we have a different approach. In the Coalition we have a different approach. And look, the other aspect that I didn't mention when it comes, and just going back to coal for a moment, one of our largest export markets. We're exporting to places in the world where many people don't have access to electricity at the moment. We're billions, in fact there are billions of people in the world who the Greens don't care about, who don't have access to electricity. And actually exporting to those places helps to lift people out of poverty. It actually helps to lift people out of poverty. We have the interjections again from the Greens, but what is it about lifting people out of poverty that you object to so much? It's all very well to sit in a comfortable place in a middle-class existence in Australia and say we're going to shut down the coal industry. We're no longer going to help people out of poverty. We're going to not just put tens of thousands of Australians out of a job. We're going to forget about the hundreds of millions of people in India, who don't have access to electricity. The opportunity to actually provide cheap electricity, affordable electricity, and lift people out of poverty. Surely that's something we should be celebrating. Surely that's something that we should actually be proud of, that we can assist in that. The Greens would kill all that.
Order, senators.
The Greens would kill all that. That is their approach to people living in abject poverty around the world. That is the other aspect of this that is worth mentioning. I said at the start, they would have us shut down entire industries, and as I say, under the Greens' approach, the Ferals would be well and truly in charge. So let's go to national regulations on CSG. The Commonwealth Government is also committed to ensuring strong and appropriate regulation when it comes to CSG mining. Through the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, the government is able to use the water trigger to assess coal seam gas and large coal mining developments that are likely to have a significant impact on water resources on a national level. Now, the water trigger was introduced in June 2013, so the protection of water resources was made a matter of national environmental significance. Now, as a result of the introduction, the minister can set appropriate conditions as part of the project approval to ensure any impacts from these projects on a water resource are acceptable. Since 2012, these projects have been referred to the Independent Expert Scientific Committee on Coal Seam Gas and Large Coal Mining Development for advice on the likely impacts on water resources. The minister takes this advice into consideration when making a final decision on approval. As at 31 January 2015, the IESC has provided advice in response to 14 requests from government regulators on coal seam gas projects, 8 in Queensland, 5 in New South Wales and 1 in South Australia. Now, regional scale assessments of coal seam gas and large coal mining developments across New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia and Victoria and other research will address key knowledge gaps, provide baseline information and inform an integrated understanding of the cumulative impacts that coal seam gas and large coal mining development have on water-related assets. The priority areas of research are hydrology, ecology and chemicals associated with hydraulic fracturing. Now, research is also being undertaken by the CSIRO to improve the understanding of greenhouse gas emissions from coal seam gas production. The data collected from coal seam gas activities will inform future updates of Australia's national greenhouse gas inventory and methods used for the National Greenhouse Energy and Reporting System. Yet, despite bringing in the water trigger, Labor never actually employed it. Conversely, this government has applied the water trigger to over 50 projects since taking office. I'm not sure that the Greens heard what I just said.
Seselja, can you sit down, please, Senator Seselja? Senator Seselja has the right to be heard in silence. Thank you, Senator Seselja.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. And I'm always happy if the Greens want to contribute to the debate. And if they want to continue to contribute to the debate, I'm happy for them to, because they didn't appear to hear what I just said, so I'll have to repeat it. Labor, who brought in the water trigger, never actually used it. They never actually employed it once. However, the coalition has applied the water trigger to over 50 projects since taking office. So what part of that, and I had the interjection straight away when I mentioned that from the Greens, what part of that don't they agree with? Well, what part of that's wrong? What part of that approach don't they support?
Thank you, Senator Seselja. I believe there's a point of order. If you could take the seat. Senator Rhiannon.
Point of order that the senator is being misleading, that this, in the House of Representatives, the government has passed to get rid of the water trigger. That is on the record. That is their aim.
Thank you, Senator Rhiannon. That's a debating point. Thank you, Senator Seselja.
Thank you. And it is a debating point. And you know, I think spuriously using points of order because they so badly failed to get their message across under their leader, Senator Milne, I don't think is appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate. So let me repeat it. Let me repeat it because there seems to be some confusion. This government has applied the water trigger to over 50 projects since taking office. So we had the Labor Party who didn't get this policy right. We've come in and taken a sensible and appropriate approach, not one of simply outright bans, banning the entire coal industry, as the Greens are arguing for, but appropriate regulation, appropriate protections. We should see those kind of appropriate protections. That is the sensible way in policy. It's not to kill jobs. It's not just to kill jobs, as the Greens are arguing for in this motion. Now, moreover, the Independent Expert Scientific Committee has produced 15 scientific reports informing bioregional assessments and 20 scientific reports on risk to environmental health from chemicals, ecosystems and water and aquifer connectivity. Now, Labor didn't publish any of these reports. They preferred to hide the facts from the public in order to preserve their political relationship with the Greens. And, of course, the Greens were happy to swallow it. They were happy to swallow it from the Labor Party because it was in their interest, because they formed part of that government. They had no actual concern there. They were happy to swallow it. They don't seem to be interested in any of this. We on this side of the chamber, though, have taken a very different approach, a science-based approach, getting the research done to make sure that as we proceed, we do it carefully and cautiously, but always with a view to growing our economy, whilst preserving prime agricultural land and protecting our natural resources. Surely that is the sensible policy. Surely that is the sensible policy option, employing the best scientists from CSIRO and Geoscience Australia to do the work and to make sure we get it right. And I know that Minister Hunt takes his responsibilities under the EPBC very seriously, very seriously. And that is, as I say, in stark contrast to what we've seen from those opposite. It is worth, and as we look at Greens' hypocrisy on some of these issues, I think it's worth, perhaps Martin Ferguson, the former Labor Resources Minister, I think he probably said it best, and it's worth quoting some of his words when he was referring to the Greens. And he said, look, their rhetoric is symptomatic of a broader malaise, an increasing inability to listen to, analyse and properly understand the words and numbers underpinning complex policy. Slogans should not be a substitute for serious discussion or critical thinking. and that is well said. That is well said by Martin Ferguson. Slogans shouldn't be a substitute for serious discussion or critical thinking, but that is all we get from the Greens. You know, they want to just shut down industries based on slogans, not based on science. Acting Deputy President, in conclusion, to support this motion would be to support calls to shut down an industry which employs, indirectly employs around 145,000 Australians, which is one of our largest export industries, which is perhaps responsible, this is just one aspect of the motion, for $60 billion of economic activity. That would be economic vandalism, absolute economic vandalism. And for all of those reasons, Acting Deputy President, for all of those reasons, this misguided motion from the Greens
Thank you,
should not be
Senator
supported.
Seselja. Your time has expired. Senator Ketter.